I'm Theron Ramacharaka. I just read a comment under my video. What is it called? Are you a woman or man of the crowd? And the thumbnail shows a black and white photograph of the Wall Street gang. And the caption on it says, "To which crowd do you belong?" So a comment under it pointed out something that has inspired this video. Here we go. I'm making this up as I go, but I think it's valuable information. The point of the comment was that sometimes when a person stands alone from crowds, he or she can become a leader. There's leadership potential there. There's also leadership potential within a crowd. This is a different path that I'm talking about here. When breaking away from the crowd, there's you could become a person could become reclusive, or a person could also become a leader, often inadvertently, by acquisition of followers, by accumulating followers. And then there is a possibility, a strong possibility actually, of that leadership turning tyrannical. So there is caution here from my point of view, from the point of view of the purpose of this channel. There is caution in that because, the old adage, the old saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there's power in leadership. One then, has power to control the thoughts and actions of the followers in whatever way, rather intentionally or unintentionally. Now, I want to put this in terms of self-mastery, personal evolvement, movement toward true selfhood, a movement away by these stated means, from consciousness hijacking and mind control via perception deception and perception control of others. I'm going to bring together a couple of things that I say over and over. One is we are responsible for what we create. Another is that we are interested in not just short-term benefits for ourselves, but also long-term benefits for ourselves. And by benefit, I'm using that term loosely. I'm talking about, results, constructive results. If we go for something that appears to be a positive or constructive result in our own lives that's short term, we may neglect to consider the longer term result of the same, outcomes of that same short term benefit. We must consider, I try to, if I were guiding somebody through a customized one-on-one course of personal evolvement and self-mastery, which I have done repeatedly, one-on-one, with others, I gear things to the best of my ability, playing my part, doing my part I do all I can to assure both short-term and long-term constructive results. But it's up to each individual, then what they really do with all of that. And that roots in what a person's motives are, and then how those motives get applied throughout the rest of the work for the rest of life. So the content of those motives and then continuity with them is one of the essential components of that assurance to which I allude. The long-term, the short-term, and the long-term results. So we are responsible for what we create, and we want to take a look at long-term results as well. If a person sets off, for example, here, to be more specific to our case at hand, if a person sets out to circumvent his or her own consciousness hijacking from others, and perception control from others, or just as a strong sense of or penchant for not being part of crowd thought and outer influences, being just already is going in this direction, a sort of I'm my own thing, whatever, however you want to put it. There may be constructive reasons for this that have short-term and the likelihood at the time of being that way in the long term as well. But false ego can be a bitch in this, especially if there arises an accumulation of followers who may think themselves, the followers, may see the positive direction of the leader and what the leader stands for and proposes and talks about. But the whole thing then can turn in a different direction, step by step, and can turn into even an intentional form of totalitarianism and tyranny on the part of the leader. The others may even come to feel trapped by that. They didn't intend in the first place for things to turn out this way, in large, as a general statement here. My point is, when pursuing self-mastery and personal evolvement and movement toward true selfhood and moving away from consciousness hijacking in one's own life, we have to bear this long-term result in mind. The same tools that push one in this constructive direction toward constructive evolvement, not just for oneself, but necessarily by way of that person's individual influence on others. The care must be taken with the content over the content, and then the results of that progress. Because all things that are put out from an individual, from a person, tend to come back around. That's in the least a necessary concern if one is concerned about long-term results. This fact that things come back, circle back, let's say by way of thought forms. Thought forms always will circle back to their origin. And on the way around that loop, they will gather to themselves or join up with other thought forms of the same nature, and they will come back. And if that original thought form, say, comes from me and is projected out, right, by whatever means, thought, vibration, whatever, by my own will, and it is corrupt in some way, or it's on the dirty side, let's say, the nasty side, whatever, the ill for others side, it'll pick up its dirty little friends along the way and come back to me with them. It'll bring its dirty little friends with it and affect me. It's the least of the considerations here. It's a somewhat self-centered one, but it's a start. It's pretty easy to expand that somewhat self-centered concern by asking, is this what I would will for everybody? Is this a consequence I would will for everybody? Because it does impact others. This long-term negative result on our own development, this result, this consequence on me, is this the consequence I want for others too? On the way, while that thing loops around and touches them, is this what I want for them? Really? I mean, this is like putting yourself in their shoes now. When thinking about this, I'm just using this to make a point. So be careful, if it's personal advancement that you want, consider the nature of it. All right, and be careful. If you are a unique thinker, if you do break away from groups and affiliations, and you find yourself in the role of having people pay attention to what you're doing and maybe fall into step with what you're doing, then be aware of the content of what you're doing. Not just for your own sake, of course, but in this case, it has to do with your effect on other people. So there is responsibility for what you create all the time. This scenario I'm setting up here is just one way that instantiates, or it's a class of instance of that phenomena to which I refer here. So, if you are a person who, so to speak, in a pedestrian and rudimentary sense here, a non-developed sense, if you are a person who walks alone in life, you're your own man, whatever, well, watch when, be aware of your influence on others, short and long term. It can be a challenge, really, as things progress in that direction, if others are looking up to you. You have a responsibility. And any social consequences or results that you are producing, that you are causing, you're not responsible for all of them through the rest of time. the closer those results are to you, social results are to you, their origin, the more responsible you are for them. As time goes on, or as those results get further away from person to person, or from cause and effect, a chain of cause and effects, the less you have responsibility for them, because the further away from you results get, the more other people's intentions and actions and decisions play a role in those results as they spread out. So, but you be careful. Just be careful, because this all has an impact on you too. If your concern is your own advancement, then this self-centered view as a starting point over these considerations in any way is important. Because you are going to be there later in the wake of what you've created. Okay, that's what I have to say about that. Be careful of involving yourself in tyranny to any extent. If you find yourself in a leadership position, well, either within a crowd or outside of a crowd, you may tend to form your own crowd then. And just watch what you're doing. Because this puts you in a position of power, and power can easily corrupt. It doesn't necessarily do so. The statement, power corrupts, refers to its tendency to do so. Especially if others join the rank of leadership following your steps. They become your colleagues in leadership. Well, be careful of their influence on you. There can become a group mind right there going on at that front, in the front ranks. And then you may fall into step with that little leadership group mind, and it can take a wrong direction. All right. For the purposes of your self-mastery and personal involvement, you're responsible for what you create. And that's a good thing, that means it's yours. It's yours. You make that. But there's responsibility with that, that has to do with other people and your long-term results for yourself. I'm Theron Ramacharaka. Be well.